Hey, welcome back to the channel. I'm Roxanne, Super Doodle Girl, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to do some neurographic doodles with using only 3 colors. These are from the Doodle Basics Kit. So I'm using my 3 favorite Tombows. We've got a turquoise, a magenta, and a yellow. And you can see I've already started here, and I'm having trouble blending them. So I'm getting these little heavy lines on the sides, but I've tried it 4 different ways. And I've learned some things, and I'd like to share with you some of the things that I've learned. All of the colors that you see on the right-hand side of the page have been created by blending the blue with that magenta. And I'll put links to all the supplies that I use in the description. So this is my challenge. I want to mix all of my colors using these 3 markers. So in this next section, I want to try to get a green. And what I've learned is that this blue doesn't blend very smoothly. So I'm going to be a little careful as I lay down the blue right along the edge of the section that I'm going to color. Now, one of the things that I also learned was I need to swatch some of this blue in my little palette over here. So next up, I'm going to add in my yellow right along the edge because I like to get the edges a little bit darker than the center. And so I'll go ahead and swatch it as well. And now let's make a little puddle, adding some water into the palette. And then I'm going to use that blue to come to my journal page, and I'm trying to blend the markers, the 2 marker colors together there on the edge. Sometimes on some papers you can use just plain water for the blending. But what I discovered on the first 4 that I did, I needed to add a little more color. So I'm bringing in the water with that, like a little bit lighter of the blue, and mixing it in. Now, as I move toward the center, I'm bringing more of the color off of the palette. So you see where I mix the blue and the yellow together, and I'm getting that beautiful light green. So I'm picking up more color and using it to blend in the edges. So this is the number 1 thing that I'm hearing from ladies who are trying to use the Doodle Basics Kit or the Tombow markers on this. This is a Strathmore travel journal, but you can see here I'm being pretty patient with it, and I'm liking the results that I'm getting. So I'm getting a nice, I like the color green, and I like that I've got that blue at the edge of it. So here we go. We're going to add a little more blue into our palette, making another little puddle. And so I'm still working a little bit, trying to get that edge smoothed out a bit. Now, truth, this really won't matter by the time I get the other 2 layers on this journal page, but I wanted to take care because I know currently we're in our Journal Jumpstart program, and some of the ladies have a lot of questions about this. So I wanted to just demonstrate what this would look like. And now I'm doing a little bit of lifting because I wanted that center of the shape to be a little bit lighter. So you saw what I did there. I put some water in the center and then lifted it off. So I'm going to try that in this upper right corner because I'm not liking what that looks like. So I'm going to try just adding water to it and see if I can lift some of the blue out to make it a little bit lighter. So yeah, so this is the basic idea. You can take any marker that is a water-based marker, anything, and you can test it by putting it on your paper. And if you add water to it and it moves, then you can turn it into different types of simple journaling watercolor techniques. So let's see what happens here. I'm going to try to add a little purple to the edge, and look at that purple. I absolutely love these 2 mixed together. And since we just added some water to it, I'm trying to drop in, trying a little wet on wet technique, and you can see the results are not very good here. But I'm going to keep tinkering with it because this is playing in our journals. It's not perfection. So I'm going to just lay down some color here on the edge, and I kind of like how it's starting to blend a bit. So maybe I'll just drop some more little spots on it. Yeah, I think that'll work. So now let's go back to our green. Well, let me see. I need to quit fiddling with this. It's not going to turn out well if I keep adding things into it. Okay, I think we're going to stop now. Now the other part that I get asked a lot is how do I decide what colors to put where? So I'm looking where we have the green, and I'm looking opposite it, so opposite of that first green. So I think I'm going to put kind of the orange colors next to on both sides of it, and then I'll put green opposite green. And so for this one, I'm going to start with the yellow first, because we know the yellow and blue make green, but sometimes which color you put down first can determine, can shift it a little bit. And you can see that on the purple ones there in the center. One of them I did the magenta first, the other I did the blue first. So this one I'm bringing a little bit, I'm just adding a little tiny bit of blue, and it's not a very smooth line, so I'm quickly laying that down. And then just as I did the first time, I'm mixing up, I'm swatching a little bit of the color, bringing it in, and you can see immediately this one's giving me a brighter green. So I'm going to just continue to do that, a mixture of water and then swatching the color from the little tin palette I have and bringing it in until this entire section is filled up with color. Now the other thing I'll note is I'm making this one a little bit lighter, but you see as it comes, I've got the yellow is a little bit stronger next to the lines, so I'll probably be tinkering with that to see. Not real satisfied with that at this point, so let's see if we can smooth that out a bit. So you can see by adding another layer, so now I'm starting to layer the colors, another layer of the blue over that yellow, and it's smoothing it out a bit. So I'm liking that a little bit better. So I still want to keep the dark and the light, but I want a little less of that strong yellow popping through. Now the final three sections, I'm going to make those orange. So that's going to be the magenta with the yellow. And so what you see here, I'm starting with three primary colors, but the work that I'm creating will be three secondary colors. So we'll have all of these are going to be basically kind of our purples, greens, and oranges. So I'm going to start again with the yellow along the border. This one, I'm just going to add the water straight to the yellow because I'm having a better time blending it. So I've got this nice bright pop of yellow. And then I'm going to bring the magenta up from the bottom. So we'll see how this works out. So far, so good. You also will notice that I'm using a really small brush for this work. I think it's a size 3. Probably could have used a 6 with it, but it's just what I had handy. And then I've also gotten sidetracked looking at that purple there. So I was adding a little bit of water to it because I dropped some water on top of it and it was starting to lift. So I just added a little more water to that. Now let's hop over to that magenta. And so this is the Tombow dual brush. And now just as I learned the first time I used this color, notice that it does not spread as easily. And so I know the video is sped up a bit, so it's not as smooth as it was. But you see that? See how I've got that border around the edge of the magenta? So I'm gonna have to figure out what to do with that. Now see, as it blends into the yellow, I'm getting that a really nice orange. So now I'm gonna swatch some of our yellow and bring it on top of that magenta, because I want that to be more of an orange instead of like looking like it's, you know, just the yellow and the magenta. So we'll see if we can get this smoothed out a little bit. And it's being a little stubborn, so it's not moving very much with the magenta. And what I'll not do is I'm not continuing to add a whole bunch of water there. I kind of notice if a color is going to move or not, and then I just work with it as it is and not push it too much. So up here, I'm going to do a little bit, trying to mix the markers a little bit before I come to the water. So I've got the magenta down in the corner, and I'm actually taking the yellow marker and I colored over the magenta so it's mixed a little bit on the page, so you could see it turn orange. And now we'll bring in the water to move that yellow around. And so with this, I want to keep this kind of light, but just have it turn a lighter orange. So I wanted to kind of walk you through all these steps so you could see kind of what it turns into. Now don't do what I just did there. I took the marker and tried to put the marker on top of wet paint. Don't do that, it does not work. So instead I swatched it on my palette, and now I'm lifting up. It's acting like a liquid watercolor, so I'm bringing the color in with my brush, and I'm getting really nice results here. So this is probably the most satisfying. So you can see I grab a little bit of color each time. There's a lot of water on my page, so I'm not adding water every time to the brush. But you see it's starting to move about. Now it's not really smooth, so it's not a very smooth gradient. That's one of the things we talked about in the last class that I did. That's not the point of this. This is not using these for, you know, realistic watercolor. This is just using them in a practice in our art journals. So it's a mindfulness practice. So I'm just kind of seeing what they will do. And I've used these three colors a lot together, so I know that when I blend them, that I'm pretty confident of the colors that I'm going to make. Now, they are not moving as well on this paper as they do on some of my other papers that I use, but that's okay too. As I said, this is the first layer. We're going to do 3 layers on this spread, and by the end of it, it will be interesting to look back and, you know, see where we ended, and then all of these little small imperfections and such won't be noticeable. So for this third section, I outlined it with the yellow, and now I'm bringing the magenta, I'm outlining it as well. Notice I did not add any water yet, so this is just marker over marker. And now as I bring in the water, I'm still consistently noticing that the magenta, it like stains and sits on the page. Like it spreads just a little bit, but it won't go into like a very smooth wash. So this is consistent. And this is also part of the practice. So as you tinker with some supplies, you kind of learn how they work, and then you learn how to adapt your technique to incorporate both your paper and your paints. And so that's what you see me doing here. So right now we've got this really fiery looking color combination. The magenta is too strong on the edges, so it's not blending very well. And so now I'm going to bring in, it seems counterintuitive, but I'm going to bring in more of the magenta to smooth that out. And the way we're going to smooth it out is we're adding more of that liquefied, that little puddle of magenta. And see, as I add this little bit, see how it smooths it out, and then it doesn't look as intense on the edges because we lowered the contrast. There's not as great a contrast between the edges and the center. Okay, I'm starting to like this well enough for my first layer. That's one of the things that I teach in all my classes, is one of the things that I do when I'm doodling in pretty much any style of my journals is I will take the first layer and I'm getting kind of big blocks of color on, not the strongest of the colors. And you might say, well, these look pretty bold here. They're kind of medium for what I can get with these markers. Because if the fully saturated would be if we just took the marker and colored in the full space. So we didn't do that. So we can still get some layering on top of them. And so that's what we're doing here. So I'm taking that magenta and I was kind of dry brushing it across the top just to take out some of that yellow because I really wanted it to be more orange. So I'm kind of playing with this to see what turns out here. And so this will conclude our first layer. So I hope this was helpful so you could see me go from taking these three colors, my primary three that are from my Doodle Basics kit, and then seeing how they can combine to make these interesting first layer of our secondary colors. And next up, we're going to get ready for layer 2. This is where you would, if you're just using traditional watercolors, you would add a second layer of watercolor with doodles and interesting things. So since we're using our markers, we're going to switch and use the bullet tip and the brush tip to add our second layer. Think about what colors we want to add to it, and we're going to do some tone on tone. So we can take this marker and it's going to be a darker version of the first layer of color. So I'm just grabbing the magenta and starting to add some little doodles into this space. I started with the space that I finished on the first layer. Oh, make sure your first layer is very dry before you do this. So for this layer, like I said, if you were using watercolor, you would just continue with your, to add doodles with your paintbrush. But this is the great thing about using these markers is that we can flip it around and now it's like we're just doodling in our sketchbook. One of the ways I think about this is using the colors that I mixed to make the secondary color to use that to doodle on top of. So any place that I used the red and the blue mixed together, I can use one of those on top. Right here you see I'm using the magenta to create these lines on top of the orange. And so it works beautifully and the colors are going to match and everything's going to look very harmonious because you're literally using the same colors to do this. So there's no, I'm not thinking through or planning out these patterns. So that's part of the neurographic style is I really just settle into my work. And by this point, since I'm not worried about trying to blend the colors together or anything, I'm just looking at the markers I have right in front of me and picking up one of those to use. So that's the other part of this practice that I like so much is by using a very limited tool set, you don't have to spend any of your time thinking about or digging through, 100 markers or different colored things. They're right there in front of you. So you just take one of those and then add it on to the page. So let's see, what else could I add on to this? Oh, you know what? Remember how I told you you're going to take the colors that you used for the first layer and blend those? What I'm doing here is I'm taking and adding another layer of yellow and I'm alternating it in between. So when I can add a little bit of water and this will blend to make the second watercolor layer here. So yeah, so that's simply what you'll be doing. is looking for ways to use the same color on top of the color that was in the first layer. So now this last large spot, I've grabbed the magenta and I'm using the brush marker end so I get a bolder line. And so I'm just kind of taking the contours of that shape and coming in a little bit And then this is the beauty of this dual tip. See how I can flip and go to the bullet tip, and you've got the thick and the thin line there, so you automatically get contrast of the lines. And so just exploring a little bit more here, adding a few more little doodles. And that concludes our second layer. And so then as we move into our third layer, what we're going to be looking for are ways to embellish your journal page. And so this is where the magic happens. These are all of the little whimsical little details that you add. There are things that are going to pull your eye into the work. And so for this third layer, what I'll be using from the Doodle Basics Kit, I'm going to use the orange, the green, and the purple Sparkle Pop pens. I'm going to use the black glaze pen, and I will be using the white Uniball gel pen. So it's these specific tools that just add a little more pop to the page. So continuing on the theme of tone on tone, so as I add these details, one of the first things I'll do is take the same color and just add a little bit of details on top of it. So for this one in the green, I'm adding these little leaf shapes. And one of the things I immediately noticed was that the darker green that's on the page is the green doesn't show up as well on the darker green. So I do like this Sparkle Pop on the lighter green. So that's something to keep in mind as you are exploring. So that's the thing I think of here. You think of tone on tone, and then you think of the opposite of that. So since the green on the darker green is not showing up, perhaps I should go to a little bit of the orange, because that would be contrasting with the green and the purple, so that might show up a little better there. So basically I'll just look in one of the sections and start making a pattern and just continue it throughout that pattern. And then I'll switch to another pen and move into another section. So sometimes I'll go back twice. So what you see here is I noticed as soon as I finished, I wanted to put there's a little like line in the center of those leaves, and that worked out really well. And now I'm going to try I think the yellow might look really nice. I've got some plants that I like outside that have, there's a contrast on the leaves to where you see the veins look almost pink. And so that gave me the idea to use the orange here for a little contrast. So I think that works out well. Let's see. Now let's bring the orange onto the orange. And so those little magenta dots, I've never gotten quite satisfied with them. So now we'll try a little bit of the orange glitter on top of them. And now the last little trick that I have is I add the little black embellishments with the Sakura black glaze pen. And then I take my Uniball UM153 and I add the white on top of the black. And that gives us the highest contrast, and it really makes the final page pop. So just a recap of what we did here. So this is a neurographic style of doodling. And the first layer, we just add our lines on the page, and then we're focused on getting the big colors on, lighter colors. So an easy way to do harmony is just to pick 3 or 4 colors and start with them. Use medium or small pens and really focus on the largest shapes first. And then you move to layer 2, which is basically just another layer of layer 1. So take those same colors, go tone on tone, and add some doodles to it. And then coming to layer 3, we're looking for places to add high contrast, such as black on white, smaller shapes inside larger ones, and of course, sparkles, just to enhance the tone on tone areas. So this is the basic 3-part process that I use on all of my journaling pages. Now, one other thing I do want to remind you is to always sign your work and date it, and make any notes so that you can document your learning process. I hope this video has been helpful for you. If it has been, go ahead and like the video and subscribe to the channel, and look for more tutorials and additional simple techniques to help you get unstuck and create every day.